Hey all, it's Vanessa Love. Alright, so recording another video. Alright, so I wanted to talk briefly about theory and uses. Because I'm so far away from where I had been in, like, with graduation and everything, I don't remember which theories I use. I use what's best for the client. Um, and that could be a variety of things. I don't just have one theory. I worked with someone who had just one theory, and I never felt supported or like it worked for a lot of things. It was actually supposed to work for the population that we were working with, and that just didn't. It didn't. It didn't pan out that way. I was also not fully trained in this. I was sent home from this was the first job that I had, the after school program. I was sent home with a CD that I had to listen to, and it was probably 2 hours, and it was just about how to do this stupid theory. And it's not an actual stupid theory, but it was aimed at parents, and it didn't make any sense to me. I actually, on my website, this is one of the more popular um, things, is that it was the nurtured heart approach. And someone has emailed me about it and is like, well, you weren't properly trained, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't imagine seeing, like, that I'm going to use that theory in, like, therapy. It, in my opinion, it doesn't work. And I don't want to learn another thing that I'm just not going to use. And that's kind of what happens, is that, you get out into the world and you kind of figure out what you're doing, and then you use what you feel works best. And so for my first year in private practice, I just read everything that I could about everything about running my own practice. I did not get the book Private Practice in like 12 months or something like that, but it probably does have some very useful information. I just at that point had to invest my time somewhere, and and money, and so I chose not to have that book, but it is probably a decent book. I'm still a little upset that my the program that I went to does not offer any, weekend workshop or weekend class that you can take for a credit about how to have a private practice. When I asked, they said that there was already one available. I just looked real quick before I started this, and there's nothing. There isn't an extra. It's not listed if it is available. And I think that what happened, and this is like books in the making. I think what happened, and of course this is just assumption, speculation. I don't know anything. I just know that people don't talk to me anymore. But I think what happened was that I went into private practice when when the director of the art therapy program, who had been in private practice, when she had advised me not to. So she doesn't talk to me anymore. She's not very nice to me whenever I talk to her. She's not very helpful. When I did have some questions about paperwork that I needed for the city, or for the state of New York license, she was the most unhelpful person. And I'm like, I wish that I didn't have to say that, but she kind of turned it around back onto me and was like, you were supposed to keep this information. It's like, I didn't expect that after 5 years of not being in fucking school that I would have to keep any of this bullshit. I recycled a lot of it. And I also went to San Diego State. San Diego State had, like, I could still use my like login information for their website and be like, I need this, and they're like, yeah, here you go, like, okay, cool, this is what I got. That's not how this school in Connecticut is, and that's very unfortunate. I don't know if they have anything on computer, actually, which I'm like, could you guys kind of get up to speed with that, because that seems more important than a lot of other things going on. Um, and so I think that there's like this huge difference between learning theory and practicing therapy. You're supposed to learn that all in internship, but what I learned was, hey, don't take everything so personally that your shitty supervisor has to tell you. Um, the other thing is that I remember learning stuff in my classes and not being able to really apply that to the population that I was working with at the hospital, because the people at the hospital are in crisis. There's no other way to really be like, well, you have to sit with your feelings now. Like, can you imagine, like, some, like, like young something or other at, one of these mental hospitals, and, you're in the middle of a crisis because you lost your job and all of your money, and they're like, well, you just have to sit with your feelings right now. You'll learn a lot from this experience. Like, no, how about you give me some actual, like, things I can use? Like, how do I update my resume? How do I, make sure that the places that I worked for 10 years ago still exist? How do I dress? How do I act? Could we, like, pretend that I'm doing doing something like a job interview, and you can, tell me how to, like, make sure that I'm doing well in my job interviews. Like, sitting with your emotions is not what you need at that point. And I also had worked with people who had psychotic breaks. I'm just supposed to leave them and be like, man, sit with your emotions. Or, like, well, Freud was talking about blah, 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 blah. Not anything relatable. The way that I use Freud is, how most things with the Freudian theory are related to your mother, your father, or your sex drive, or death. So, I used to do a lot of dream interpretation, so kind of got used to being like, that equals that, that equals that, that equals that. And most of the time when I say something, it can be very, it relates. It's so funny because sometimes I'm just like, well, Freud would say that blah, 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 blah. And people are like, you know what? That actually fits exactly what the situation is. I didn't know that someone had an issue with his mom. My coworker at the mental hospital had come to me and was like, look at this web. Isn't that interesting? And I was like, oh, I think the web has to do with your mother, like something about like how it catches, or like especially with like trap spiders, like they kind of have it like, inside something. So it's like it's that trap, but it also has that womb-like thing. And so she was like, oh, actually, he does have issues with his mom. And I was like, I had no idea. Anyway, so, like those, like, you can definitely use theory sometimes when you're, in counseling, but also sometimes, like, you can't really, because theory and action, two totally different things. And I learned a lot of theory. Internship was probably a decent place to learn some things, but in some internships I wasn't entirely great about. I didn't learn a lot. I don't know how to, I don't know what to say about some of these experiences that I had, because I'm like, well, they were really bad. Like, I think, when I talk about how unhappy I am with the art therapy field, like, I think just years of being, like, punched down and pressed and just, you can't do this and you can't do that, and they made a statement about this, and, and one of the people who I did work with at one point at an internship, she has this voice sometimes, and no, that's not how you do that. And when there was that controversy, and I'll probably allude to it many, many more times, about, I got into an argument with people about whether coloring books were, or coloring pages were art therapy. And, she commented, no, that's not the way that it works. And I was like, you don't remember me. You don't remember me as one of your students. You are the one who taught me, and I'm the one saying that I don't agree with you. It was a very weird situation, I have to say. And then having other people comment, and it was a whole big ordeal. And I'm like, I had a fucking argument about coloring books as a part of my professional identity. I had an argument about coloring books as my professional identity. Yeah. I'm just going to let that just drop there. So, this is where I, really have issue. And, I am going to go for my ATR, but I'm a little pissed off about having to go for that for various reasons. And one of the reasons that I just dawned on me like a couple of days ago was I have to do CEUs to keep these fucking letters behind my name that I don't want. I'm not going to use ATR after my name. Like, no point in doing that. I just want to be recognized as an art therapist. That's all. I went through the fucking program. I have my master's in art therapy. There's nothing I can do about that. If someone could if I could pay like couple $100 and have it traded in for another one, like, oh, well, instead of having a master's in art therapy, you can just have your master's in counseling. I would totally fucking do it and be done with it and just be like, yep, this is what I have my master's in. So that I don't have to be like, well, I have my master's in art therapy. I'm technically an art therapist. Technically, I'm not an art therapist because politics. Have fun figuring that all out. I want to step away from this stuff. But, I got fucking trained in this shit, and I have to go through this stuff. So that's where I am. Might as well. But it kind of pisses me off because I'm like... So if somehow I'm not good as an art therapist, but I'm fine as a counselor, CEUs, I'm guessing, will come into question, and I'll be like, why the fuck did I have to do CEUs for you guys just to keep my license, when I didn't fucking care about keeping my license. I just want, my recognition, not my license. That's something different. Keeping my recognition as an art therapist would, rather just... If I could just turn this in, I would be like, I'm done. Really, really done. Well, I hope that was informative for you. I'm like, oh, I'm sure it was. Thanks for continuing to watch these and like them and subscribe. And yes, thanks so much. Have a great day. Bye.